Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my DxO Photolab live stream today where I edit your photos using DxO Photolab and give you some basic ideas on how I edit your photo, my thinking process, and also to kind of highlight the tools that I use in Photolab so that hopefully you can learn from that by seeing it actually in use and how I use them and why. And I always invite you to submit your photos before the stream. But if I have time, if you submit them during the stream towards the end, I can try and fit those in as well. Excuse me. So let me open up the chat window and see if somebody let me know if the audio and video looks okay before I get any further, because I've been known to talk for like 20 minutes and uh, there was no audio the whole time. So I'm gonna take a sip of water while the chat, there's about a 20-second delay from when you type it to when I actually see it. So keep that in mind when you write something. And if I go past your question and start answering other questions, uh, feel free to ask it again because I probably missed it. It's very easy to do the way this thing scrolls up and down. But okay, thank you, Gordon. I'm glad everything's up and running. So my goal today really is to again show you just give you an overview of Photolab 7 for those of you that may be trying it out or haven't or been thinking about getting it, and give you some of the reasons I like it, the very best. I think it's the very best photo editing software out there for editing individual images or images in group. There are some limitations, of course, compared to all editors. Every editor has their sort of pros and cons, if you want to put it that way. But I don't necessarily look at things as cons. It's just, things they can improve or add in the future, right? So, uh, also, again, feel free to ask any questions. So I'm going to go through probably about 10 minutes or so of just an overview of Photolab 7, and then open up the Q&A if you have any questions. Specifically, there's something I covered that maybe you I didn't quite explain well enough or need to hear it a different way. And then questions about other things of the software that I'm not going to go over because there's so many things in here. So I'm going to try and keep it simple to just the core editing features of the software. And of course, I have my affiliate links down below for um, that you can download a free trial. But more importantly, uh, you know, the it's I'll have a discount code as well for 15% off, and I forgot to put it in the description before the video started because I didn't get the discount code before I created the stream. So I will post that here shortly, maybe in the chat section initially, and then I'll add it to the description of this video itself towards the end. Um, so for me to get credit though, just click on my link first and then apply the discount code, even if you've already downloaded the free trial before you purchase it, because you know how cookies are or how they track things. Sometimes things get lost. So the best way for me to get credit is if you click the link before you purchase, then apply the discount code. And the discount code is relatively exclusive. They don't have discounts throughout the year. So this was kind of a special case just for you guys, my viewers here on Rob Trek. So I was really happy they were able to do that for us because otherwise, the best time to get software or get deals is really on Black Friday, which is in November. And, if you can wait that long, that may be a better deal than because I got a 15% coupon today, but then you lose the time to work with the software between now and then. And the DxO payment model is just a one-time payment. And so far, the updates have been pretty regular. They're still updating the optics module so it's compatible with future cameras. Unlike other software, after a year, you can't get updates anymore. So I've been getting updates for Photolab 5, which I've had for, at least 2 years, maybe 3. I forget how long it's been. for new cameras coming out, and also I'm getting continuous updates for Photolab 7, of course, because this is relatively new. Um, okay, so I'm glad to see that sound and everything is running well. And what I'll do is let me go ahead and pull up the screen. And again, just leave a comment if you're not seeing the screen. So I need to switch over to this button, and it's still black. Uh, and pull up this window. So right now you should be seeing the screen, and then I'm going to add a little box of myself down in the bottom. So hopefully, let me know in the comments that you can see me and see the screen. And let me pull up this particular window. So the looks like I got five or six images here to edit today from you guys, which is great. And I need to do one more thing before I go any further. Is I'd like to be able to see the chat while I guess over here is better. Okay. So I do see a question from John Mark. So I'll just grab that before I actually start going into it. My first question would be, you recommended a standard workflow for DxO PL6. Would you change that for PL7? I made one change since that video. Specifically, in Photolab 6 video where I did a workflow for beginners, I applied the optical corrections and denoising last. It was always the last thing I did in Photolab 6. I've changed the workflow so that I do that first now. Um, it doesn't matter if you do it first or last, but I like to do it first. And a couple of things. Uh, well, there's really one reason I do that now is primarily on older, slower machines. Um, if you apply the uh, optical corrections or specifically noise reduction last, then it's going to speed up the workflow overall when you're doing all the other edits and things. But I have a much faster machine now, and most people have more. If you have a more modern machine, I recommend you apply the specifically optical corrections. Always apply that first. And then I also apply the noise reduction. Noise reduction you can do first or last. Most images, you can apply noise reduction last because hopefully you're not shooting at high ISO all the time where you need to apply noise reduction. But I like to apply noise reduction and optical corrections first, which is different from PL6. But it's not a critical change. Everything else I did in that video um, should apply. Now, of course, you can always change your workflow to fit better how your brain works when you're editing photos. It was just, of course, it's just one way to do it, right? There's always a lot of different ways to approach editing. So in that video, I tried to give a more generic approach to editing. What you're going to see today is me editing on the fly, where I generally follow what I did in that video for Photolab 6. Uh, but you know, image to image, things can be more dynamic, and I may want to attack a particular editing problem first before I do something else, which may be different than what I did in Photolab 6, the Photolab 6 workflow video. So, but the important thing in editing really is consistency. So having a consistent workflow is, I think, very important to get consistent results and then gradually tweak and improve on that as you get more experience with the software, with your camera and lens and all of that stuff. Because once you kind of get the sort of details of the workflow uh, to a point to where it becomes second nature, like, or subconsciously you're doing these things, you can concentrate more on your photography and the image and the composition and the look and feel that you want to get from the image, instead of wondering, oh, I forgot to apply this correction, or I need to go back and do this. So that's the purpose of having a consistent workflow, is so that your brain can shift its um, energy or processing to actually producing the image that you want in editing. And it's just like we don't think about breathing, right, or swallowing, or our normal functions in life. They're just pretty much automatic. We don't have to constantly think about that, and we can concentrate on all the other important things in life, like our photography, in my case. But that's why I promoted that. But okay, um, so let me just give you a quick overview here. What you can see is basically the first thing you normally need to do, right, is get the images from your camera onto your computer. Now, I like to use Adobe Bridge, which is a free software you can download from Adobe that is simply a way to import your images from your SD card on your camera onto your computer. And then from there, you need to develop a way to organize your photos on your computer. And I have a whole video on how I organize my photos. Basically, I do it by year. If you look over here in the left panel, by quarter, and then within each quarter, by date. And this is primarily how I import photos, just chronologically. And then by date, I put specific names to the folder, and you can do that right here in the panel. You just click on a folder, hit F2, and then you can name it whatever you want here. But that's generally how I do it. Now I have additional folders for projects that I'm working on. Like, a lot of this is for YouTube video reviews. When I'm doing self-portraits, if I'm doing ISO tests, or I was experimenting with flat lay photography, I created these projects on my hard drive. Now, there's another way to do this. Um, Down here, Photolab has added this project sections where you can, independent of the folder, because what we're looking at over here is the folder system on your computer. I'm not familiar with Apple. It's probably similar, but this is how it is on my Windows computer. I have this folder structure, but I can create additional projects, and it's very similar to the folder structure on your laptop, or on your computer, I should say. The key difference being is that this is a virtual folder or cataloging system, in that if I have some images, say, like I have my folder here, ISO samples, and I have a folder here for samples that are at ISO 3200. Um, Now, if this was a computer folder, these images will only exist in that folder unless I copy them to another folder. But the problem with that is now I have two copies of the same image, and it takes up hard drive space. Using the projects function over here, if I want to add this image to a different folder in the projects, so for example, like I know this I took in Conowingo Dam, I can just drag this over to another project I created called Places. So I just add that. So now this image of this eagle is both in the ISO 3200 folder and in the Conowingo. So I don't have two copies of this image on my hard drive. I still have the one copy, but now I can find it in different places. And this I'm still I had this set up pretty elaborate at one time, and then I messed up the thing, so I started over from scratch. So I'm rebuilding this, but I used to have a pretty elaborate project or project section over here, where you have you have project. What do they call it? Project groups and new projects. So a project group is like, it has like this drawer icon, and then projects themselves can go within the drawer project. Um, So you have projects, and then you have project groups, and then projects. So project groups is just a group of individual projects. So this is a very powerful way to organize your photos as well. And then of course you can do keywords. You also have access to the ITPC information. So if you're familiar with these things, you may want to use these as well. I've kind of gotten away from using keywords. Uh, I used to do it a lot, as you can see. There's just a billion keywords in here, and they're useful, I guess, for some. I'm finding it less and less useful because there's just too many different ways to say the same thing. Like I have Great Falls National Park, Great Falls National Park, Maryland. I have it here in uppercase. So this is what ends up happening to me is I have too many duplicates or different ways of saying the same thing, and then I end up not finding the image I want. So I found it much easier to look at it at a much on a much bigger scale and just categorize things under the projects folder. All right. Uh, so just to recap, you import the images onto your computer into some sort of structure. Like I said, I typically do year, month, day, and then for each day, I name the individual folder to what that generally is about. And then you can further organize things by projects, which are basically virtual folders in Photolab 6. And then if you like using the ITPC information and or keywords, you can do that as well. Uh, Now, once you've imported the photos, so let me just go to a folder. So once you've imported the photos into a folder, this is where you might want to start adding them to projects or adding keywords and stuff. But you can start to prune your images from here, and you have this you have basically two different ways to prune your images. You can add or well, there's three actually. You can add star ratings from 1 to 5. You can pick it, and you'll get a little green icon, or you can reject it. Uh, so I might. So what I'm going to do is pick these two as I go along. Maybe I'll reject that one, then I'll pick this one. So all I have to do from here is just go to my filter tab over here, and I can say, show me all the images I picked. So I picked these 3 out of the 6. Or I can say, show me all the rejected images and the picked images. Or I can uncheck and say, just show me the rejected images. Or I can show everything again. I can just reset it up here. Or I can say, show me all the images that I haven't given any tags to, meaning picked or unpicked. And I'll say, okay, I do want to do this one and this one. And you can see it disappears. And then let me look at the rejected, and let's say, actually I like this image, so I'm going to go ahead and pick that one. Um, and then also, like I said, you have star ratings, so I can go down here and just show me all the ones that have 1 star. So I have this image. Or I can say, show me all the ones that have no stars. So I have all the other images, and so on and so on. So there's all kinds of selections here that you can, you'll eventually learn to get familiar with. But I primarily use pick or unpick. It's the simplest way, right? I like this image, I don't like this image. And then I pick all the ones that I don't like and I delete them. Otherwise you end up with, millions of photos on your computer. Um, okay, so let me stop here and see if anyone has any questions about the importing, organizing, using projects, or pruning the images. Um, If not, I can move on. So I'll give the chat section 20, 30 seconds to catch up and see if you have any questions about this. But this is really the most straightforward part of Photolab. Some have argued, why doesn't Photolab have its own import function? And really, it's kind of a blessing and a curse. If Photolab has its own import function. You're going to be limited to what it can do. Whereas if you import the photos yourself using another tool, like I use Adobe Photo Bridge, you have a lot more flexibility in organizing the photos before you start to edit them. So I think that's the best way to do it. But some argue something like Lightroom, for example, you can import the images directly into Lightroom, and that's certainly very uh, convenient, right? You just simply open up Lightroom and start to import your photos. But you're limited to what Lightroom can do and also what it does, even if you don't want it to. So what I found is a lot of times I used to import directly into Lightroom, and then whenever I want to make changes or rearrange things so that it works better for the way my brain thinks and organizes things, it takes a long time. There's a lot of overhead in Lightroom, keeping track of keywords and files and the way they catalog things, that sometimes it can take a very long time for Lightroom to uh, for you to make changes to your organization or your structure or your workflow because the way Lightroom catalogs things. And again, you're restricted to exactly what Lightroom can do. Okay, so Joanne says, yeah, I don't take many photos, so I'm happy with Windows Explorer. Yeah, so of course you can use the Windows File Manager and just copy them from this SD card onto your folder. That's certainly the simplest way. uh, but because I take so many, I have to have some thought process as to how I'm going to organize them once they're on my computer or before I get them onto my computer. Okay, I'm just going to go over the tools and the layout of Photolab 7, and then we'll start editing these photos. So when you open up Photolab, generally it's going to open up to the last folder that you had open over here in the folder section. So it's going to open up to my live stream folder where I'm going to be editing your images. And then over here, again, down here are the projects. And then down here are external selections where maybe these are images that you exported to Lightroom or Photoshop and had come back. I rarely use the external selections thing because when I'm doing round trips between, say, Photolab and Photoshop, which I do time to time because I like the AI tools that Photoshop has. Um, I'm working on one image at a time, so I don't really need to worry about uh, that particular thing, which is kind of a history window of different things you've done. Okay. Oh, one last thing. There's a search box up here where I can just say, show me all the images I took on May 23rd, for example, was the last thing. Of course, this is why I got into photography, is take pictures of my dog. But let's say I want to find all the images that I took at ISO 12,000, right? So I can say 12 12,000. And right here, it'll show you all the different ways that the number 12,000 shows up on your folder. So I don't have any folders called 12,000. I don't have any ITPC information 12,000. In this particular folder or in this particular search, I don't have any images that are 12,000. But I do have notes here. This is the, what is this? Let me try that again. Yeah, the file name has the number 12,000 in it. So let me try 12,800. So I do have, so 12,000 ISO is kind of rare, right? But 12,800 is a little more common. So I can select the ISO here, and now it's going to pull up all the images that I have at 12,800, which are just generally test charts where I was doing some testing and things. So there's different ways to searches here, and you can combine searches. So I can say I want ISO 25,600. So I'll select, let's see, I don't see any there. 25, 800. Let's do this. ISO 6400. So I'll do ISO 6400, and I want ones that I took at ISO 6400 and I shot at f4. So 4.0, and this is the aperture. So I've combined two different parameters here, right? Images I took at ISO 6400 and images that were shot at f4. So this is an and operation. Uh, so experiment with that as well and get a feel for how that works and if that's going to work for you. Okay, so that's the search feature. So along the top here, we have our general menu selections here. I'm not going to go through all of these. I rarely need to go to this anyway, with the exception of the help. In the help section, there's a really nice selection here called shortcuts. And this will give you all of the shortcut keys that you can use in Photolab 7. And if you're kind of a keyboard jockey, you're going to really appreciate having quick access to what all the different shortcuts are. So I do use this shortcuts option quite a bit. And then the next line is the menu bar or tools bar, I guess is what it's called. And this is going to change depending if you're in a browsing mode like I am now, or if you're in develop mode. So right now I'm in a browsing mode, so I'm just going to have some basic tools here. So if I did any editing to this image, I can do a quick comparison, or I can do side-by-side comparisons. I can go to full screen. This is for moving around the image. So if I blow up the image, I can move it around. Um, I can do a quick one-to-one crop, 100% crop, or I can select, a different crop. If I really want to punch in very close, I can do it that way. Go back to one-to-one. And I just use my mouse wheel to zoom in and out. That's normally how I do it. And then I just keep an eye on the percentage up here of how much I'm zoomed in. Okay, and then over here, if I had applied any corrections to this, I can reset the image or I can apply a preset. So let's look at the apply presets. Now I have a bunch of custom presets in here. You can see I have my RAW default, and I'll talk about this when we start editing. And then my full frame camera, my Sony, a lot of times I want to just instantly crop the image. I don't want, I don't want to have to, I do a cropping all the time in different sizes, 1:1, 5:4, or if I want to crop the full frame down to an APS-C size, or if I want to crop it down to 4:3. And I do this because I do a lot of testing of different lenses that work on multiple mounts. So when I get a lens for review on a full frame camera, it might not be for full frame. It might be an APS-C lens. So I can immediately crop the image to APS-C size. So it's going to automatically crop it. Or um, I can go back to just the regular full frame crop, etc. So I have another video on how to make presets and things. So that's a whole separate video. But I just wanted to give you an idea. Now down here, you'll see number 1, 2, 3. These are the standard presets that come with DxO. And sometimes you only want to do optical corrections. You can do that. Uh, you can apply the natural style, etc. I don't use these very often myself because I've kind of designed my own preset. And my preset, we'll select it. Basically what it does is it does optical corrections and noise reduction to the image automatically. So I don't have to do that. Something I do to every single image. So I said, I'm just going to make it a preset and apply it to every image before I start editing it. And this is the difference between the Photolab 6 video that I did and what I do today. Okay, so And then over here, you have your information panel. So you have your metadata information here with all your EXIF data, the lens used, and some additional things if there were star ratings, etc. And if you have the GPS coordinates there. And of course, any keywords, if I want to add them here, I can just say, this is a train station. Again, I don't use keywords so much anymore, but if you do, you can do that there. And then you can add in, I know you can. I'm not sure why it's not sure why it doesn't. I This is something I never use either, but I thought you could go in and edit these, but it doesn't look like you can. So you may need to use a third-party software to edit the ITPC information directly, it looks like. But okay, moving on. The histogram has some additional features here. We can look at individual channels and stuff. We won't get, I just always use RGB. I rarely use any of these other ones, but I assume there's some application for it, but it's beyond what I do. All right, so we're done. So let's go ahead and start to edit the images, and I'll talk about we'll start with just this first one here. And we'll talk about, oh, to start editing, I'm sorry, to start editing, you can just double click on the image, or I can click customize here. But either way, this is how you get into editing. Um, and let me just see. Let me go back to the photo library. Okay, let's just go ahead and start editing. So over here, we have our different panels. So we have our lighting panel, our color panel. This is our denoising and sharpening panel. Over here are where we do optical corrections and stuff, or correct distortions, things like that. And then finally over here, we do our local adjustments. So now my general workflow is to just apply optical corrections and denoising, which I created a preset for that goes right here. So that's all it does. And you may have noticed that the image straightened out a little bit or has less barrel distortion, and it would have less vignetting. If this image were brighter, you would see that. But it did the optical corrections and denoising. Now, what you need to understand about the denoising in when you're editing is it just kind of gives you a minor preview, a very limited showing of the actual denoising that Photolab does. Because if you look closely, you still see a lot of grain in here, although it's better than it was. And the reason they do that is for editing speed, because if it had to constantly denoise the image while you're editing, it would slow the workflow down to where it's just unbearable. So you just kind of get a preview, but you do have in the denoising panel here, you do have a little loop here that you can click on and just kind of zoom in. And in this little window, you can get a preview of what the actual denoising is being done to this image. Um, okay, something's not right here. Let me check something. Oh, crap. It's always something. I updated Photolab 7, but I kind of lost my deep prime and stuff. Let me check something here. 7.7 denoising. Of course, this happens on the day I want to demo and show off DxO Photolab 7. I run an update and something has changed. It's not letting me apply a prime for some reason. It's not a big deal, except I do have one image here that's kind of high ISO. Ugh. Yeah, Joanne, I thought I could edit it, but now I can't even do uh, deep prime noise reduction for some reason, because I updated the software just before I went live, and now of course something has changed. Um, 'Cause I could have sworn I was able to update ITPC information as well. But no, it's not because I applied a correction, because these photos hadn't been edited yet. Yeah, I can't get in here for some reason. And then also, my deep prime is disabled. Interesting. Let me just make sure my local adjustments are working. All right. Well, I'll have to demonstrate deep prime at another time because it's not activated. I'll have to figure out why that is. Um, but let's go ahead and get to editing. So I've applied my basic preset. So let me just start over my workflow. And then what I normally like to do is I like to crop the image if I need to. So I start thinking about the overall composition. And I'm thinking for this image, I'll take a little bit wider crop because there's doesn't look like there's much down here. And up here is just, it's pretty, but there's a lot more here than I need. So I'm going to crop actually to something wider, 16 by 9. And let me just see. And I'm going to apply very simple rules here. Just simple rule of thirds. I have 1/3 in the foreground. I have the main subject here in the crosshairs of this line. And I've just kind of cut off this area up here, which doesn't really add anything interesting to the image, I think. And it looks like the horizon is relatively straight, certainly with the cross being vertical, so I don't need to make any corrections here. But if I needed to, I could just adjust it here. I can click the auto button. So it looks like it did straighten it I rarely use auto because that doesn't look right to me either. It looked better before. So I'm going to leave the horizon alone. And then, so let me just turn that off. So I think we're okay here in terms of the composition. Now, sometimes I change my mind later, and I can always easily go back and do that by clicking on this panel. Um, the next thing, let's see, we have this. So we've applied basic denoising and all of the optical corrections for sharpness and chromatic aberrations. So I normally go to the color space next and look at the white balance. Now, night scenes like this, I like to look at it two ways. Uh, One, and it depends what I'm shooting. When it comes to astrophotography, generally I like to use just the standard daylight white balance. But for this aurora thing or whatever it is, this doesn't look right, right? Because the reds everywhere confuse the camera, and that's why I made it much cooler. But I think it looked better with a cooler white balance. So I'm going to go to as shot, and I think this looks pretty good as it is. So I'm happy with the white balance in this case, because the skies are a little bit blue, and maybe a little bit too magenta on this side, so I'm going to correct this part locally because I don't want to affect the beautiful magentas here on the aurora. Uh, and then over here for color and black and white rendering, what I like to do here is select the profile, and this is going to come up. You'll see DxO camera profile. If the camera is supported by DxO, and most of them are, I've rarely run across a situation where it hasn't been included, but this will give me the actual Canon colors of their standard JPEG profile. So if you like Canon colors, you can just click it here. Uh, and the neat thing is if I want to apply Canon colors to, say, my Olympus camera, I can do that right here in DxO as well. But generally, I just like to use the color profile that matches the camera. All right. And then let's see. Now what I want to do is see what kind of information is in the shadows here and how much more information or that I might be able to pull here or subtract information because the sky is a little brighter than I would prefer, but it does look like it's just after, it's either twilight or it's, after sunset, magic hour. So let me go to the lighting panel, and I'm just going to do a quick push here on the overall exposure just to see what's in everywhere. This is also kind of a quick way to see if you have any sensor spots on your lens or on your sensor, I should say. There's additional things you need to do if you actually want to find sensor spots, but a lot of times I'll see them here when I just brighten the image. So down here, it looks like, yeah, the base here was very underexposed, so there's not much detail left. It's just kind of mushy. So what I'm going to do is I will do a local adjustment just to the bottom to bring that up. I could try and do it here in the shadows, but the problem with global adjustments is a lot of, it's gonna brighten up the shadows up here as well, which I don't want because I want the sky to remain dark. I don't want it to be brighter or as bright as the ground. So this is why I don't raise shadows on scenes like this because it is global. So it's brightening the sky to a point that I don't want it to be bright. So I would much rather have a local adjustment. So I'm going to go over here to local adjustments. And we have several tools here. We have sort of a radial tool. This is a linear tool. This is another linear tool. This is something you get with film packs, so we can ignore that. Then we have a masking tools that'll automatically mask. We have a standard brush tool and an eraser tool. So what I want to do is I want to do a linear gradient, meaning just draw a line right across the horizon here, and everything below the line I want to be brighter. And I like to use this particular one. It's called a control line. Versus this over here is just a graduated filter. But this one here, the control line, you can actually can add additional masking options for luminosity and color. And on this particular image, it's not going to make as much a difference, but I'm going to draw the line up here and just kind of have it gradually go into the sky. And then immediately the first thing you see is the red, which shows you how it's masking or what it's masking. And I can minimize how much bleed I get into the sky by adjusting the luminance where I'm I can be more selective on the luminance. Again, it's not the best image. I'll explore this particular tool more and maybe in another image. And I'm just gonna increase these slightly because I don't want it to bleed into the sky quite as much. Consider for luminosity and chroma masking. So chroma masking is limiting the mask by color. Luma masking is limiting the mask by brightness. And again, this image is not ideal for this kind of control, but anyway, I've drawn my line here, so let's go ahead and now we can push the shadows. So I've raised the brightness down here without affecting the sky. And I can push it even more right in there. So I think that looks pretty good. uh, Now, the bottom of this cross, let me deactivate this, is also being affected because it was within that graduated line. So I can select this control line, grab the eraser, and see if I can. Oh, I guess I can't do that exactly. I wanted to mask this out a little bit. Whoops. So what I'll do is let me bring this down. It's probably a better way to do it. All right. All right, now let me work on the sky. Now the sky, I want this to be a little darker, and I want a little more detail in the aurora here, meaning a little more contrast. So I'm going to use actually the radial filter here. Oops, I have to create a new one. Let me create a new one. And I'm going to pull in the blacks a little bit and push the highlights. And if I click again, it's just going to duplicate that particular control point that I created just in the areas that I want it to. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Now let me try and add some detail here in Aurora. So I'm going to create a new control point. And I do that by clicking on the plus sign here, and then let's see what we can do on this. So what I'm going to use their clear view mask or clear view feature. Where is that? It used to be right there. I guess I don't have the clear view here. So I'm just going to use micro contrast. Okay. I think that's all I really need to do here. Maybe try and brighten this cross up a little bit. So I'm going to, let me create a new brush or a new control point. And I'm going to make this a little bit more selective. Like this. And let's just push the shadows a little bit. Oops. Right there. I'll add another one here. I just want a little touch. Okay. All right, now overall the reds are a little bit strong, which I guess is the effect of this aurora. Since I wasn't there, I really don't know. I've never seen an aurora myself. but I'm not crazy about how red this is. So let me go back to this control line and see if I can pull the reds back a little bit like that. Can even maybe shift it? No. Maybe just shift it a little bit so it's not so red as well. Okay. Let's just push this up a little bit right there. All right, I think I'm done. So let's just do a quick before and after. I'm going to hit the escape key. And there's a side by side. So again, I don't have the deep prime noise reduction being applied for some reason, but the image would be very, very crisp otherwise. But yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I mean, the main thing we had to do is just bring in the foreground a little bit so you could see it, and then just I added a little more contrast. I kind of like this more purplish magenta over here. So let me see if I can fix that. So I used this control point. I'll just shift it like that. Okay. All right, that looks good. Um, let's go to the next image. So we have one here from Garrett, and it looks like a doll. So we're going to go ahead and customize this. And let me reset and apply my basic preset. And then my composition feels a little bit off center, but it's not a real person. So let me see. I think I'll just crop in a little bit this way. And let me straighten her head a little bit. Okay. All right, that feels better. It just felt a little off to me. And the lighting is really nice here, but I want to try and accentuate some of the highlights up here. Maybe bring in the shadows down here a little bit, especially up top. And we'll keep the shadows down here on the bottom, about where they are, maybe even a little bit darker. Because typically I don't know how big this model is, but typically with a full-size person, the light fall off is a little bit a little stronger uh, on a larger subject. Because this is probably an 8-inch doll. I'm just guessing. Okay. I think the white balance were good. Let me check. Let me just try a couple of different white balances. Daylight, because I don't have anything particularly white in this image to pick off of. Let me look at S shot again. Okay. I'm just going to warm it up a tad. Just manually this way. Yeah, that looks a little better. And then maybe a tad magenta. And I'm just eyeballing it, right? at this point. Okay, so overall the exposure is not bad, but it's just a little bit too dark in some areas and too bright in others. Again, because it's such a small subject, the light fall off is not as much as I would prefer, or that would actually happen if you're using lighting. But let's start with some easy stuff. So I'm gonna go up here and just add a little bit more highlights there. Let's see, just something that looks about right. And a little bit more here, and some more here. Okay, how about there? That didn't do much, but that's okay. Maybe a little bit tad more there. Okay, I'm going to create a new control point because these areas are much darker. And just bring that up a little bit. How about here? Just trying to see what looks right. Okay, leave that there. All right, so what I can do now is I can rename these. I can just call this hair highlights if I want. And then this one I can call this hair shadows. Okay, so I brighten the highlights and the shadows in the hair. And then let me see, what I want to do is I want to darken a little bit here on the skin. So let's do that on these two areas. And I'm just going to do just a global here and just darken it just a little bit. Maybe, yeah, right about there. Okay, and then call this arm, leg. And let me see if I can bring up some more of these shadows. Like that. Maybe not that much. Okay. Uh, right about there. And then the last thing, I usually do this first, but since this is not a real person, I like to brighten the eyes up and just a little bit there. Okay, I think I'm done. So let's do a quick before and after. And as you can see, it's very, very subtle, the changes, right? So it straightened the crop out and just added some lighting into areas that I thought it needed. Um, and like I said, I didn't like how bright it was over here. So I just brought the brightness down a little bit so the fall off looks a little more natural. And then of course, bringing in the details of the hair, I think that looks better, and the eyes. Very, very subtle change. I think the biggest change was just the crop. All right, let's go back to the next one here. The second one by Garrett. And I'm just going to look in and see how much detail we have. Okay, gosh, this one would benefit from deep prime. So what I'm going to do, let me apply a preset, and oops, let me go ahead and edit. The other thing I've been doing is if I hit the F9 key on my keyboard, it brings the side panels in and out. So I'm going to crop. I think a square crop will be fine. Be a little bit more. Okay. And let's see if I can go over here and pull in blacks a little bit. I'm just adding contrast basically. Push the highlights a little bit. All right, that looks good. And from here, I think I can go right to local adjustments. So what I want to do on the eyes is just brighten those up a little bit, just like I do for people. And we'll increase the vibrance as well. Okay. Looks good. And I'll call this the eyes. And then we'll add another control point kind of around the rest of the animal here. And just, I don't need to do too much brightness, but I want to increase the vibrancy or saturation. And I think that's, let me go back. I'm going to pull this back a little bit. Yeah. Do a quick comparison. Okay. This one. Now, when I have one of the control points selected and I do compare, it's only going to compare the difference for that specific, for this particular panel. So anything I do in this panel, I can compare. So what I have to do is I deselect this or I hit the escape key and I can compare it. I can compare the entire image rather than just the local adjustments. So I think I just need a little more vibrancy overall. Uh, maybe do it with saturation. And then I'll do a global Oh, I forgot to add the camera profile, RP. Okay, there we go. And white balance. See, when I skip a step, this is what happens. I should have done this first. There's some whites over here. So let me back this off. Now that it's warmed up. This is why when you miss a step, you don't get consistent results. Now I have to fix all my other things. Mostly this control point. I don't need as much saturation. And for the eyes, I can probably back that off again just a tiny bit. All right, we'll call it. I'm going to hit the escape key and let's do a comparison before and after. So yeah, over here, a lot of times when you're doing macro photography, or technically this is close-up photography, you're going to have to crop in a bit to kind of get an eye on the subject when everything else is kind of blurred out anyway. There's not much there to recover. So, I just like to crop in on the subject directly. If it was landed on a flower or something more interesting, then I might use a wider crop to give the bug some context. But whether you're looking at this large image or this small image, cropped image, you can see this bug on a leaf, right? There's nothing else. There's This side is just not adding any new information, so there's no reason to include all of this. It doesn't give the bug scale, it doesn't give the bug any other context, so it's okay to crop in, but just enough so you can still see enough of the leaf and, this background down here for some creative effect. Yeah, Photoshop, you're getting the same problem, right? Um, that is weird, isn't it? I don't know why. Yeah, mine is doing the same thing. Ah, that teaches me to do an update right before I do a live stream, before I work out any bugs that might come up. But that's a big one to lose deep prime, right? And I don't see my clear view either, come to think of it. Normally it's right in here, right? The clear view function, but it's not. I mean, the most important things are here for most images, but yeah, I don't get that. Hi, Dale. How are you? I see Dale came in. Okay, let's go to the next image. I'm gonna go to the photo library. And this one here is from Murat. Okay, for this one, let's let's apply my basic preset. And all of this is blown out. I doubt we're going to be able to recover much there. And then the colors on the right side are a bit muted for my taste. And compositionally, I feel like this would work better as a vertical rather than a horizontal. Um, Mainly because we have a lot of horizontal lines here, like in these beams going across the bridge. There's some verticals, but not as many as there are horizontals because we have horizontals all in the sidewalk here. So it's almost even, but I'm leaning towards the horizontal lines are stronger. And there's not much information here on the right side. And on the left side, it's all blown out. So I think doing a vertical crop makes the most sense. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to grab this and rotate. Now, once I start cropping, I always try to be conscious of my corners. So I can see that I have a line coming in from this corner and a line coming here. a line going up this way. So all four corners have a line. I got that almost right the first time. So let me bring it in just a bit more and over. Now this clock is centered, almost centered. So now I'm trying to think about, now that I got these four corners right, does the image still balance well relative to the things in the image itself? So let me just look at it. I think it still balances okay. It's a little bit heavy on the right side. So let me see if I can just bring this in. Sometimes cropping is the hardest part, right? I think we're okay. It's balancing a little better, right? Now I have the clock in the center. Now it's balancing a little bit better because when the clock was off center, it just felt a little bit heavy on on the right side. So I think we're good here. So, all right, so let's start working with some of the global adjustments. Clearly, I'm not going to be able to bring those highlights in. I'll try. Well, actually, quite a bit came in there, but it's messing up the right side when I do that. So I'll have to do a local adjustment. But let me work with some of the contrast in the image overall. Okay. So I kind of like the exposure now overall and the contrast. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, again, I forgot to do white balance first. I don't know why I keep doing that. But let's click on the clock because that should be white. That's a little bit too cool. We have this gray pipe. I don't know. I think Olympus did a good job with the white balance as it is. It's pretty spot on already. So I'll leave that alone. Camera profile. Okay, that looks good. Now let's work on this highlight area over here. So that needs to be a local adjustment. So the question is, do I use a brush or yeah, I can get away with just using control points, I think. Let's just pick one up here. And the luminosity mask is pretty tight already. But yeah, that got most of what I want. And then let's just pull the highlights in and the midtones. Add some contrast. Okay. Um, I think that's good enough. Now I want to add a little bit of shine to the walkway here. So I think I'll just use a regular brush. You add shine by just adding contrast, basically. Um, Micro contrast, like that. And then the last thing I'll do is, let's do a radial on the clock. Oops. Bring that in. A little bit off center is fine. Right there. Because I want to reflect some more of the light from the left side onto the clock. So I'm just gonna just add a little bit of brightness there. Maybe some highlights. And a little bit of contrast. Okay. If I do the same thing over here just to get a feel. No, I don't want to do that. All right. Okay, I think I'm done. So let's do a quick comparison. So there's the before and after. Like I said, there's nothing on the right and left side of this image that's interesting or not blown out. So I just cropped it in, and I decided on a vertical because of there's plenty of horizontal lines in this image, so that when you do a vertical, it doesn't look too tall, if that makes sense. So if we look at this image by itself, I think this image holds up pretty well and it's well balanced. And the fact that the left side is blown out is not a big a deal. Um, but I think that looks pretty good. All right, let's go to the next image. We have one here from Roger. Roger says, Roger and Joanne say they're not getting the same issues. That's weird. It's never happened to me before where I did an update and something didn't work right. It usually everything is much better. All right, so let me bring my work tabs back in. And hi Peter, good to see you here. Um, okay, so let's apply my basic preset here. And there's a lot of distractions here with all of this brush in front of the heron. So I think I'm going to crop as much of that as I can out and still give the bird some breathing room. So I think that's a little tight. Something like that I think works. You can go up to about there. All right. What I want to do now is try and separate the bird a little bit more from everything around it. So I want to minimize this brush, this out of focus stuff. So let me go to the white balance first. I think white balance wise we're good, but I'm just going to spot check and just see how it looks. That looks a little cool. How about up here? No, again, I think we're good. We were good with the original white balance. Maybe just a tad warmer. And let me apply the EM5 Mark III profile. All right, that looks good. Okay, let me try and minimize some of this other stuff and bring out some details in the bird. I think what I'll do is I'll use the auto mask tool. Not a huge fan of this tool, but it does come in handy sometimes. So I'm just going to select the bird. You'll see why. This is something that Photoshop does a lot better. The subject select. So if I need to be very critical about the subject selection, I just use Photoshop, but I can get by with this. And then I don't really see how it's masking, so what I do is I just crush the exposure in one direction or the other. And this is where I clean it up. So I need to add a little bit more in here. Let me zoom in. Add some more in there. And then I'm going to hit the Alt key and just subtract out. Let me check my flow. A little bit stronger and just get rid of this. And a little bit in here. And down here. And I'm using a feathered brush so that the transition from what was selected and what wasn't is a little bit more natural. Okay, and then let me fix in here. And with this auto masking tool, the smaller I make the brush relative to the image, and I can do that by zooming in on the image or hitting the control key and just making it bigger or smaller. You know, the more precision you're going to get in the selection. So for example, if I wanted this to kind of come back in, I can do that. But I think this is okay. All right, so let me bring the exposure back to normal. And I'm going to make a copy of this mask. So I can do that right here by duplicating it. But I'm going to invert it. So now I've selected everything but the bird. But I didn't want to delete the mask that I created on the bird. That's why I made a duplicate, because I may want to make local adjustments to this bird as well. So let's see. Let's see if I can make some changes to that background that will minimize. Yeah, that helps. Midtones and highlights. Something. Let me try and make it a little bit blacker this way. No, it was better with the exposure. I think this minimized that a little better. And then I'm going to, I'm also going to soften it up a bit. So let me just, excuse me, pull the sharpness down. And let's pull the contrast back. That'll soften it even more. That's good. Okay. I'm just experimenting a little bit. Okay, that looks good. And let me go back to the bird. I'm just going to add just a hair brightness to the bird. Maybe some vibrancy. Like that. I want to accentuate sort of the eyes and the beak also. So I'm going to create a new mask, do a radial right on the eye. And I'll just brighten that up a tad. Add some contrast. And move it over. Okay. So, okay. Now it doesn't really need color, but okay. And I'm gonna do something similar to the beak, just on the orange parts here. Increase the color masking a little bit. And push the vibrancy up. All right, then one last thing is I'll do a vignette. So let me see, where's the vignette? I think I can do that with a gradient. I do have vignette tools, but I think that's something that comes with film packs, so I'm just going to do it manually. Let me invert this. Hold on. That's how I used to do it. There should be a vignette tool. Oh, here it is. I just turned the vignetting off. Okay, I think that's it. So let me just do a quick comparison. Um, this leg reflection, Roger? Maybe. Yeah, that is a little distracting, isn't it? Okay, let me fix that one thing and then we'll call it. Uh, do that with a local adjustment. And we'll just use the masking brush. And I'll just bring it down. Maybe desaturate it a bit. Oh, not that much. Okay. All right. I think that looks good. Oops. Kind of overshot the mark a little bit, so why did it do that? Well, maybe just a regular brush would be a better way to go. Oh, I see what happened. Ah, it's these little things. Just brighten it and desaturate it a bit. I mean, darken and desaturate. Is it? Must be this mask here. All right. I shouldn't have touched that leg because now I can't remember where I adjusted it. Uh, Maybe it's this one. Well, anyway, sorry, I'm getting a little flustered here trying to fix that. I don't want to bore you guys with that. It's easy to fix normally, but I don't know why I'm getting flustered over this. Uh, I think that's probably all I need to do. Yeah. All right. So we'll just do a quick before and after and move on to the next one. But basically, you can see what I was trying to do is just bring the all this distracting foreground out and make the bird stand out more from the background. So I think that looks pretty good overall, right there. Okay, let's go to the next one. And this one is from John Follows. Let me apply basic preset. And let's just open up the image in the full edit mode. Okay, so again, here we have a ton of duplicate information. I don't know where I get this from. Maybe it's from doing architectural photography, where I try, and it's basic composition. Try not to include elements that don't really add anything to the story or the scene. And there's a lot here, right? Um, which are not like repeating patterns or things like that that add some visual interest. These to me, like all of this around here is kind of a distraction. So this is how I always approach the crops is I just try to see what can I take out of the image but still maintain basically what it's all about. And I think this is just as good as the full image. And then from here, we just need to work on the colors. So white balance wise, I think we're okay. Let me just see what shade looks like. Okay, shade looks, because this looks like it's in the shade or cloudy day. So I'm going to go with shade. I like it a little bit warmer. And what if we increase the vibrancy a tiny bit? No, I don't like how it's pushing the greens. I want to sort of pull the greens back a little bit. So I'm going to do that specifically. So I'm going to select this area back here and just desaturate it a tiny bit. And then I'm going to select one of the darker sort of purples in here and increase it a tiny bit. Maybe even give it a little bit of brightness. And then let's go over to the light panel. I'm going to give it some more micro contrast. Maybe not that much. Maybe something about there. How about some regular contrast? Yeah, a little bit of regular. And then if we play with the sliders a bit, now that something right in there. Okay. The other thing is I see a tiny bit of yellow in here. So if I select that, looks like it's a yellow orange down here. It's pretty much the same. Okay. I'm going to go back to the colors and just saturate those. Maybe brighten them up a bit. Okay, how's that? All right, that looks good. I think that's all that needs to be done there. So let's do a before and after. So again, it's primarily a composition change and then slight tweaks to the color and contrast. But overall, this is what I would do to this image. And in the crop, you'll notice that I have this corner and this corner. It's sort of pointing towards the subject in the middle. And then the other corners are kind of benign. I think that looks pretty good, just the way it is. All right. So that's all we have for today, I guess, in the editing. So that looks great. I hope you got a good feel for what Photolab can do. Despite the update, I lost deep prime. I'm gonna have to figure that out between now and the next week when I do this. But uh, what I want to do is let me find my um, there we go. Let me find my coupon code. Let's see. It's I'm gonna get it here. It's my buddy. Okay, so I'm gonna paste it here into the chat section. So this coupon code, they gave this to me specifically for my viewers here in the channel. It expires June 1st, so it's only good for about 10 more days or so, if that, maybe another week. What is it? June 1st, right? June 1st is going to be, oh, so it's only good till this weekend. So what I might do is I'm going to try and fix my deep prime and do another photo editing stream on Friday before this coupon expires. Uh, so that, I can really demonstrate everything I can do. I don't know why. Yeah, I got a note here. It says restart required. So I don't know if that's related to DxO or not, but I probably just need to restart my computer so that everything gets set up properly. But what you want to do to use this discount code is just go to my link here, https robtrek.com/DxO. Ah, not that. Dang it. Ignore that. My dyslexia is coming through here. All right, so that's the correct link. robtrek.com/DxO, not DOX. Use that link. Then you can apply the coupon code. uh, and get 15% off. And, download the 30-day free trial if you don't have it already. Or if you're using it now and you're thinking about purchasing it, or you've decided to purchase it, click on my link, robtrek.com/DxO. Then you can apply that discount code and get 15% off if you're thinking about getting it now. And honestly, it's what? It's almost June now, right? So you may have to decide in the next couple days if you want to get the discount, or I'll try and get a discount code again for another stream, but they may not give me another one for another month. But the next big deal is always Black Friday. That's usually when they have like 25, 30% off the software. And they have new releases too as well. Typically, there's no guarantees ever, but typically so. I personally don't see any reason to wait. I think DxO Photolab 7 is really good uh, as is, and I wouldn't need to upgrade this ever, honestly. I mean, they're always making improvements, and if they add in things like panoramas and HDR and uh, all the other kind of like stuff that I do sometimes because I do panoramas a lot. That's the one thing I kind of miss, and I have to use Photoshop. But there are free third-party options. They work okay. Um, but I would say that that's the only con or feature missing in Photolab 7 that I use regularly is doing panoramas. But I think for the core images, the processing with the D Prime XD, with the control points and the linear gradients and be able to mask by color and luminosity and all of these things that I did today just make DxO very usable and it just connects with the way I think. And hopefully you guys find it to work well for you as well. And uh, you'll start getting really great results. I haven't found any other software that can generate the kind of images easily, and overall the output image quality I think is the best of any other processing software I've used. So if there's any other questions, just let me know. I'll hang out here for a few more minutes, or as long as I need to if you guys have any questions, and I'll wait for the chat to catch up. Uh, Oh, okay. Photoshop says rebooting works. So I should have, yeah, I should have rebooted the computer. If I reboot during a live stream, I'm going to lose the connection. So I have to do that next time. So that's good to know that if that's all it takes is a reboot, then we're good to go. But with the images we had today, the D Prime XD would have added a little bit of detail and reduced the noise a tiny bit, particularly on that first image from Peter. It would have helped quite a bit, I think. But um, all the other images, the D Prime XD, especially when we're looking at it through a live stream, it'd be hard to see the differences that it does. But I can tell you in person, when you're working out on your computer, it does make a really big difference. So uh, I'll try and do another one again on Friday, though, either way. So look for that stream to come up. But if you want to start submitting images for that stream coming up on Friday, don't hesitate to use the same link that's in this video to submit your images. And I'll spend more time just editing rather than kind of giving an overview of Photolab 7 so that we can get to the business right away, as Peter would say, let's get to the business, or I forget what his saying is exactly. So thanks everyone for being here. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you again soon.